She's a huntress, trained to take down werewolves. But she's also a woman with feelings, desires, and a life she loves. And then, just when she thinks she's found a balance, she's captured by the enemy. Now she's got to face the queen, who's not just a ruthless leader but also a mother. It's a story of conflicting loyalties, unexpected empathy, and the fight to stay true to yourself. So, are you ready to join me on this thrilling journey? Chapter 15. I couldn't remember the last time I'd given my living space a thorough cleaning. After returning from my second scouting assignment, a crucial step in my meticulously planned for phased strategy to determine the optimal entry point, I was convinced my feet couldn't ivity. Yet, as I sank into a hot bath, the soothing water served as a stark reminder that Ryder was due to arrive, and my apartment resembled the aftermath of a tornado's destructive path. The irony was lost on me had been raised in an immaculate household where deep cleaning was a sacred ritual preceding any guest's arrival. Now I was living out my mother's worst nightmare, surrounded by chaos and clutter. If she could see my current state and truly comprehend it, she'd be utterly appalled, her face contorted in a mixture of shock and disappointment. As I soaked in the tub, an nagging thought persisted. Didn't I deserve a clean home for my own sake, beyond merely presenting it to others? The question hung in the air, challenging my self-perception. With renewed determination, I hauled myself out of the bath and set to work, accompanying my efforts with one of my favorite playlists. The upbeat rhythm pulsed through the apartment, infusing energy into my tired limbs. Who decreed that cleaning must equate to suffering? I whirled around my kitchen wielding a broom like a dance partner, then glided across carpets with a vacuum cleaner that predated my existence. Its familiar hum a comforting backdrop to my impromptu cleaning concert. Humming along to the music, I attacked the toothpaste splatters on my bathroom mirror with vigor, watching as they disappeared under my determined scrubbing. The kitchen sink, once a breeding ground for mysterious organisms, surrendered to my assault of soap and sponge. The mountain of laundry, which had seemed insurmountable just hours ago, became manageable when approached one garment at a time. As I folded and tucked each item into drawers, I marveled at the sheer volume of clothing I possessed, a fact only apparent when everything was neatly organized. I tackled all those long, neglected tasks, from dusting baseboards to sanitizing toilets, a completed chore adding to my sense of accomplishment. As I stood in my now gleaming living room, surveying the fruits of my labor, a peculiar sensation stirred in my chest. It wasn't quite pride, not quite happiness, but a small ember of warmth igniting within, a feeling of contentment I hadn't experienced in far too long. I felt human, not a robotic counter attendant serving customers day in and day out, not a cold-blooded assassin dealing lethal blows. I was simply a young woman, in my own space, doing something for myself, and, of course, preparing for the imminent arrival of an attractive guy. My next challenge was selecting appropriate attire. True, all my clothes were now clean, but my wardrobe consisted primarily of utilitarian pants with countless pockets and moisture-wicking tops. I aimed for a comfortable look, but not excessively so. I didn't want to appear as though I was trying too hard for Ryder's benefit. This left me pondering the makeup dilemma. How much was too much for this ambiguous encounter? While leaning over my dresser, I gave a frustrated sigh and almost slammed the drawer shut. I needed someone for this. I needed a friend I could call and lean on. Someone who would giggle over my options and tell me that yes, I could wear mascara. Or no, I shouldn't, because it looked like I was trying too hard. But like my home, friendships had been neglected and had fallen apart. I eventually decided that if I could deliver a killing blow, I could also dress myself. Buttery black leggings were pulled up my thighs along with an oversized tourist shirt that I had picked up in New York on a family trip. My slightly damp hair was pulled into a messy braid that trailed down my back like an auburn rope. With 5 minutes to spare, I pirouetted around my home, making sure that anything personal, strange, or dangerous was put away. The last thing I needed was to have a conversation about why I owned so many daggers. Then, he was at my door. I almost stripped the damn things off the hinges to get to him. Hey, he greeted, already thrusting something into my hands. While I stepped back to let him in, I saw that I was holding a nice wooden board covered with an assortment of cheeses and meats, along with some fruit and crackers. Hi, this looks amazing. But you didn't have to bring anything. I said the words, but my mouth was already watering. Like the terrible hostess I was. I hadn't even considered feeding him. This was a blessing. Come on. You finally tell me your name and you invite me to your place. We have to celebrate. He slung off his light jacket and hung it on the hooks. Wait, this is your house. Right. I cowed and even blame him for being skeptical, yes. Well. I mean, I'm renting, but it's mine for now. The corner of his mouth curled ever so slightly, but he said nothing as I gave him a limp tour. It mostly consisted of the tiny kitchen, the smaller bathroom, and the living room where we would be spending most of our time. To be frank, it never looked quite so sad to me, all mismatched and tattered. Are these your parents? He asked, owning in on a small picture I had on the coffee table. My throat immediately closed, cutting off the thoughts of inadequacy. It was the photo in my bedroom with my parents in wheelchairs. This was taken years ago, before wolf drain had struck them. I had a beautifully practiced smile on my face, the one I perfected for photos with friends, and my parents shone from behind me. Standing on the beach in Spain with my whole family seemed like a lifetime ago. My brother was as stoic as ever beside me, refusing to smile for the camera. I remembered thinking that I would hate him forever, as siblings do. I just didn't know it would become a reality. Yeah. I finally managed. We all went to Barcelona when I was still in high school. That must have been an amazing trip. Is that your brother? Yes, oh, awesome. Does he live nearby too? Whatever lively feeling had filled my chest before evaporated, leaving me wanting to crumple inward. We don't talk anymore. I don't really know where he is right now. I didn't add the part that he had abandoned me and my parents when things got hard. Shit. I'm sorry. I didn't mean you didn't know. I reasoned. I gestured to the couch I had purchased used 3 years ago. We can talk about serious things after I kick your butt. One of the things I knew about myself was that I was ridiculously competitive with absolutely everything I touched. Maybe a smarter girl would have reeled Ryder in by planning the cute and sweet card. Once I had a controller in my hands. I didn't care about any of that. I was a menace. The only times I left Ryder get ahead of me were when I knew I could intentionally sabotage him. I drifted around courses, swearing at every minor inconvenience, and doing a very impolite celebration every time I won. Ben would shovel snacks into my mouth and carry on to the next round. I could have played for hours, like a child who finally found someone to play Barbies with. I forgot who I was even racing against until I felt his leg press against the side of mine. I felt each of my muscles contract with the sensation. How had I forgotten he was right there? How had I gone from a cleaning frenzy to treating him like a best friend in a matter of an hour? But when I turned to face him, there was only softness in his features. So I guess that proves it. You're better at a child's game than I am. Oh please, I'm sure I could wipe the floor with you in anything. I challenged back, but my focus was still locked on where our bodies were touching. Well, I know how to quit when I'm ahead or just holding on to a scrap of pride. Ryder cleared his throat, almost seeming a little uncomfortable for a moment. I had gotten used to the way his knee bounced beside me through all of the races. But it's pet up now. You did say we could talk about serious things after you have proven yourself. And I would say my ego can't take much more of a beating. I surveyed my surroundings. Had I left out anything else that would damn me to another conversation I cowed and get around? Had I said or done something wrong? I knew my personality washed for everyone. But surely, he had already seen bits of me, had returned of his own will. It cowed and ten because he lost. And if it was the end, wouldn't he just fade instead of confronting the issue? Yeah, sure. I blurted, forcing a grin. The casual, careless smirks I had grown used to in the sparkling eyes that I found mesmerizing were now tense. I'm sorry if this is a little forward, he began. am just a really big believer in honesty. So I'm just going to be blunt for a little bit. I just want to make sure that you don't currently have a partner. That I'm not stepping on anyone's toes by being here or spending time with you. The last thing I want is to damage a relationship I don't even know about. No. Of course not. I've been single for I cut myself off. He didn't need to know that. I'm not seeing anyone. Okay. His fingers absently fiddled the buttons on the controller that was dwarfed by his hands. I didn't know if it was butterflies or knots in my stomach. Are you open to a relationship? Yes. It came out to eager. To fast. If he didn't know that I was entirely captured by his laughter and demeanor, he certainly knew now. Some part of me pleaded to change the answer. I couldn't do this. I couldn't handle this now. I had other responsibilities. I needed to be engaged and clear-headed for the time being, not swayed by fancy cheeses and figs. I didn't care. Are you implying that you would like to be in a relationship with me? Now Ryder had relaxed back against my couch. Humor danced over his features. Or maybe it was something closer to satisfaction. I couldn't tell, but it warmed the cavity in my chest. We don't have to label it right now, but I would love to see where this goes. And just like that, the handsome distraction became my boyfriend. Kind of. Chapter 16. When Cassie asked if I could cover her shift at the CAF almost 2 weeks later, I knew I should have turned her down. I had too much to do and this was not how I needed to be spending my time. But the fluttering warmth hadn't left my belly and I felt like I couldn't deny anyone anything at this point. So I scrubbed the floors and stocked pastries with my head completely in the clouds. A few of the regulars even commented on my positive mood. My dating history was not extensive beyond high school. I had tried and failed to keep a handful of relationships afloat after my parents got sick, but my CAG-ness and their inability to understand made things fall apart. Still, even with my limited history, I knew this was good. Very good. A couple days ago, Ryder and I had gone on a date to a newly released blockbuster movie. It felt so normal to sit in the dark with his thigh pressed against mine. 1 drink and 1 bag of popcorn between us. When a jump scare occurred, I flailed like some desperate damsel, finding myself clutching Ryder's arm, barely biting back a shriek. After I apologized in rushed whispers, he had just laughed and eased his mouth against mine. First kisses shouldn't have mattered much anymore. I was a kid with distorted ideas of love, searching for a prince with a glass slipper in his hand. But kissing him had been something different, something I couldn't even put into words. One hadn't been enough. I had almost followed him when he pulled back. Just a taste. That was all I had been given, and I felt like I was addicted. The idea of kissing him filled my mind when I should have been focused on literally anything else. The following days I had barely been bothered by a hurricane. I returned to scout out new route to the Royals. I had trained relentlessly with Milo until we found the perfect combination. Each time my muscles screamed at me or I felt exhaustion creeping into my bones, I thought of Ryder, how he had accidentally sung along to a punk song and blushed crazily when he realized, how we both admitted to loving terrible movies, especially with poorly dreamt up demons, or the kiss that would not leave my mind. At least, not until a massive man walked up to my counter. "Hey, 1 second. I'll be right with you," I called over my shoulder, placing the clean coffee cups on the counter. When I spun to face him, I realized just how huge this guy really was. I had to crane my neck to look up at him. I was average height for a woman, if not then a little on the tall side. He towered over me like I was a dandelion among a spruce tree. The t-shirt would have been baggy on most fit men, but it was tight to his body, hugging his biceps and his pecs. I subconsciously took a step back. "What can I get you?" I forced out. The man grinned, his teeth gleaming at me, but I was studying his eyes. They were so red, as if he had spent the previous hour rubbing them. Was he on drugs? Drunk? I couldn't smell anything on him and the rest of him appeared normal. Too large, but normal. A flat white. "Please," he answered. He had one of the lowest voices I had ever heard. To stay or to go? To go. Please. I had a job to do. I knew that. He was just a customer, and if he wanted to pump his body full of steroids, that was not my problem. Even so, my body felt tight as I turned my back to him. Vulnerable. Hair on my arms raised as I prepped his drink. I should have been in my element. This was my home as much as my house was. But I just strained to hear something. Anything from behind me. But as I spun around to give him his drink, he was texting away on his phone, only offering me a smile when I set the drink down. His fingers closed around mine as he grabbed it. His warm touch startled me, as if I expected his fingers to be ice cold. My gaze snapped up, only to find him already watching me. The bloodshot eyes flickered once over my features before his grin returned and he pulled away. Sorry, my bad, he murmured, stepping back. I gave him a tense smile and all but ran to begin prepping sandwiches. A couple hours later, I gave another werewolf hunter the reins, but my day was not finished. I parked the old Subaru outside of Dawn and Arm and Des' home, feeling the warmth and tenderness from my date finally drift away. And the feeling only got worse when I entered the little compound, finding both of them waiting for me. Oh, you smell like cinnamon buns. Dawn sighed as she hugged me tight. Arm and didn't even bother to rise from his chair in greeting or so much as nod his head. I settled myself down on a nearby chair, hearing it groan under my weight. You've lost weight, Arm commented. And I had. I had never been the kind of girl who looked like women in magazines, but even less so now. There were no soft, subtle curves. I was rigid muscle. I no longer represented what was traditionally accepted as femininity. I was an athlete, a powerhouse. I've been running and lifting, I said flatly, which was a lie, but certainly not the whole truth either. I didn't know how they would react if they found out I was still seeing Milo. Good, he muttered to himself. Your body is going to have to be strong. Once you get on their land, you'll stay there until the task is done. We have limited intel on them. We don't know their movements, but we can't risk getting you in doubt more than once. Cassie is going to be waiting in a car on the trunk road for you. I didn't realize we were so far into planning, I said, gnawing on a piece of celery. We move on Wednesday, Arm and stated. Wednesday, I repeated. The gears in my brain were slow to catch on. Like in today's, Wednesday, yes. The team has been notified to pack up their belongings so that we can move on. A new owner for the CF is going to open it on Friday. Just like that. My entire life was being uprooted. I had known this was coming and I had been doing was obsessing over a man, but we will make sure your parents are taken care of. He roared there. We'll tell you all where we are going on Thursday, but it might be best if you pack your stuff now. We don't want one of them figuring out where you live and waiting for you or something similar. You just focus on what you have to do. You aren't going to be more ready than you already are. Huntress, this is what you were born for. Chapter 17. On Tuesday night. My body was thumbing with anxiety and I wished so badly that it was the normal giddiness that filled me whenever I knew Ryder was coming over. No, I was a wreck, because I knew tomorrow morning I would be leaving my home and there was a fairly good chance I would not be returning. And if I did make it back, I would be wrapping my life up in neat little plastic bags anyway, leaving everything and everyone that I loved here behind. No more sleepy mountain town. No more regulars at the coffee shop. The good news was that my arsenal had been restocked. I had enough silver-coated arrows to take down a small army. For knives of varying sizes had also been provided, especially designed for throwing. The other two for closer range emergencies that I would hopefully not have to use. I had spent my morning with Milo, inspecting each piece for imperfections, then deciding how I could put them on my body for the smoothest access. I was thankful for every second Milo spared me because I knew he didn't owe me or the rest of the werewolf hunters a single thing. He had an eye for things that I skimmed over, and he knew tricks that allowed him to walk away from situations that should have killed him. It was the only reason that I kept my mouth shut when he asked me what options I thought would save a few seconds. The tightness in my shoulders, The constriction of my chest told me that a few seconds were not going to matter. I was going into the den. Surfacing again was going to take a goddamn miracle, far beyond something that a few weeks of training could offer me. It was what drove me to see my parents again. I knew my mother didn't care when I walked her through a basic skincare routine, just as I knew my father didn't understand me when I babbled along about the car. It didn't stop me from sobbing softly into my hands when I told them that I was going to be moving away for a while. Armand and Dawn had offered to move my parents to a new facility, but I didn't want my parents to go through the stress, especially if they were moving to follow someone who might never come home anyway. Maybe I should have spent my last few hours rehearsing the plan, making sure I knew every step of it. I didn't care. I had called Ryder up as soon as I left my parents' facility. He answered on the second ring and seemed delighted that I had found a terrible movie about mutant sharks attacking a small island community. I was slicing up a cucumber for a veggie tray when he let himself into my home. Part of me thought it was a little early for the comfortability, but I reminded myself that I had lustful thoughts the very first time I laid eyes on him. Social norms aside, all of this felt right. "Hey, Georgia," he greeted, as per usual. His mouth saying my name made my legs weak, and as per usual, he came with his arms loaded with goodies. "Did you know that the local brewery also makes pop?" I had no idea. "They have a black cherry cola and a grapefruit soda." He placed them on the counter, pushing them towards me. "Not risking root beer," I teased as he pulled me into his arms and planted a kiss on my forehead. It was amazing how something could be so exhilarating and second nature all at once. And it was crazy to me that I wanted it, that I was happy to have him hold me so casually, as if it were as natural as breathing. I did nudge him away so I could continue prepping the vegetables though. "I drank that garbage because I'm a gentleman. I will not be doing it again," he stated. "You subjected me to pop-punk covers in the car afterwards." Ryder was someone I envisioned blushing often, but this seemed to be a soft spot for him. His cheeks heated and he shook his head. "That was an accident. I forgot that I was listening to that playlist, but you told me that you didn't mind them. Besides, I listened to all kinds of music. I was just reliving my angsty teen years. You can't tell me you didn't have side bands and blast rock when you were younger." I actually didn't. I did bleach my hair blonde though. Hated the color of it because some lacrosse guy that I had a crush on said he liked blondes. So I spent my weekends going to lacrosse games that I didn't care about or roaming around a mall to find products that would keep my fried hair from falling apart. Ryder snorted at that. "We wouldn't have been friends back then. It's even a little hard to picture you like that." He was right. Of course. I would have hated this little rented house. Would have turned my nose up at working at a coffee shop and not some big corporate job. Things change. But they do. A few minutes later we were settled on my old, lumpy couch with the veggie tray and our craft sodas. We took turns guessing what would happen within the first 5 minutes, but it was hard to keep my attention on the screen when his arm was wrapped around my shoulders. Was this what it was supposed to be like? Was I supposed to feel this attracted to him? Was every touch supposed to send sparks down my arm, deep into my belly? I tried to stay focused. I really did. The movie was awful and predictable, just the way I liked them. Sharks attacked. Humans fought back. The threat changed. Humans were eaten. Useless animal jargon was thrown around, as if the writers suspected the audience didn't know anything about nature. We were right on track for the humans to win, but my attention kept drifting to Ryder. When he would celebrate his correct predictions, when he would laugh at an absurd scene, which was all of them really, I found myself watching him more than the film. My fingers itched to trace the line of his jaw that was covered in stubble. I wondered what those lips would feel like under my gentle fingers, or the noises he would make if I nibble his ear just right. "You aren't even paying attention," he pointed out. "Those mercury eyes never leaving the screen. Maybe you just lied to me about liking shitty movies so you could pretend that we have a common interest. I think that with another man, I would have blushed furiously and blurted out an excuse, or said something sharp-tongued that would make him recede. With Ryder, I didn't feel the need to lie. Slowly, I reached up and brushed my fingers over the soft kin just behind his ear, drifting into his thick, dark hair, all just because I wanted to. I wouldn't lie to you about that. I just got a little distracted. That's all, I whispered, letting my mouth drop closer to his ear. Georgia, it was a warning. And tonight, I loved a challenge. I decided that I didn't want my mind to be filled with what ifs anymore. I didn't want to wonder about how he would respond to certain things. I wanted to know. When my hand reached the back of his head, I curled my fingers, tugging on his hair. Then under suction, I leaned in, letting my lips brush against his ear as I said, "How am I supposed to focus on anything but you?" "Georgia," he repeated, his tone shifting to one I hadn't heard yet. "Yes, Ryder." One moment I was toying with him, fully aware that I was playing with fire. The next I was straddling him. I didn't know who moved first. I just knew that he was between my legs, that my hands were gripping his shoulders and his face was level with mine. Christ, it made me catch my breath. "I love hearing you say my name," he confessed, his fingers gripping my hips. I didn't care much for words in that moment. I couldn't. He was beneath me. I felt like I could hardly breathe, much less make coherent sentences come out of my mouth. I lowered my lips to his instead. The movie was completely forgotten when he kissed me back, for how gentle he had been previously. His aggression stunned me now, arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me to him while he let out a moan, like he had been waiting for this for far too long. He tasted unlike anything I could describe, a blend of warm spices and sweetness that made me cave into him. His tongue brushed my lower lip, subtle and smooth. I opened for him immediately. Wild, heady thoughts filled my mind, having him under me, only my shorts and his pants separating us. I thought of wicked, unholy things, like how he would smirk at me from between my thighs, or how he would moan when he slipped inside me. I could feel how rigid he was already. It only pushed my fantasies farther. I could take him to my room, or we could make good use of this couch. There was no point in complicating the process. A large hand came upwards. My chin caught between the thumb and the forefinger. I only had a second to mew in protest before his mouth was on my jaw. Hell. Georgia, you're going to break me. Ryder groaned, bucking his hips hard. His voice was gritty in my ear. Then he was kissing my neck, gently at first, like he was testing the water. Just soft kisses, barely enough for me to even feel. I squeezed his shoulders hard, pressing my breasts against his chest. With each exhale, I was repressing the urge to tell him what to do. But he knew. When I pushed him, he pushed back. He started leaving wet open-mouthed kisses on the side of my throat, trailing downwards. Teeth nibbled on my collarbone. I just whimpered. The kisses remained rough, surely rough enough to leave a mark, but he began making his way back up. Slow, calculated. I didn't understand. It felt just as urgent as before, but the pace was painfully sluggish. I wanted it. I wanted all of it, and I wanted it now. I fisted his shirt, trying to pull him to me. There was a pinch of pain when his mouth met the base of my throat, right in the slope between my shoulder and my neck. I was melting for him. I was soft clay that he could mold any way he wanted. He pushed me back. My body went rigid. His head slumped forward, his brow resting against my shoulder. For a moment there were no sounds outside of our heavy breathing. "Ryder," I whispered gently. He stayed perfectly still, not moving as I released my hold on his t-shirt and shifted back on him lap. Dread built. "Oh my God. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come on to you like. I'm sorry if I read the signs wrong." His head lifted then, and I watched his mouth move as if he were running his tongue over his teeth. Finally, he spoke. "Don't apologize. I wanted it. Fuck. I still do. Well, we can. I just think that maybe we should take things a little bit slower. That's all." His breaths were coming in a little easier now, the smile on his lips tentative, but warm. Somehow, It didn't settle the swarm of bees whirling around my mind. We don't have to rush. We have time, and I really want to do this right. All of this, but I'm not going anywhere. Georgia. Not for a long time. You don't have to worry about that. He vowed. I have forgotten that I should have been worried about that. He might not have been leaving any time soon, but I might not be coming back. Chapter 18. The next morning, I was off to change the history of the world, whether common humans knew it or not. I pulled on a pair of camouflage pants that had been purchased for me and a neutral shirt. All of it was specially designed to control scent. In theory, if a deer could not pick up my scent, neither could a wolf, which was why I was not taking any food with me, no matter how it was packaged. Surely me slamming a pepperoni stick into my mouth would grab attention I didn't want, and that was fine with me. I wasn't feeling particularly hungry anyway. Once my hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail and I had rechecked my gear, I called Cassie to come pick me up. The ride was awkward. I knew she wanted me to say something. I didn't feel like I owed her anyone else any words at this point. If I wanted my last moments to be in silence, then so be it. When we arrived at the drop-off spot, I dawdled off to the ditch, wrinkling my nose as I smeared mud onto my cheeks. There were other options, sure, but Armin convinced me that this was the best. Using a cosmetic could carry a smell. This would help me mask any odor I was carrying too, making me smell just like the nature around me. It was just unfortunate that I was covering my own smell with something so pungent. Then, and only then, did I force myself to talk to Cassie. I know Armin gave you strict orders to leave after 3 hours. Follow them. I have my cell phone on me. I don't think you'll have service when I'm on their territory, but I'll text you when I'm out. Okay. Cassie's throat worked as she swallowed, unable to meet my eyes. I don't want to leave you. I don't mind waiting all day if that's what you need. I never thought that I would say it, but deep down, I didn't want her to leave either. Now it was too late to say those things anyway. Hey, they don't call me Huntress for nothing, right? You'll get it done and be home before you know it. In the meantime, I don't want you getting in trouble with Armin. Go home after your 3 hours. Okay. We don't want you raising suspicions while I'm in there. If they see a car parked here for that long, they might come investigate. Right. She nodded her head repeatedly as if she were trying to convince her heart as well. Just be careful in there. I will be. Promise. Then the long trek began. It was one of the cleanest routes in and out of the Royals' lands with multiple different lines to exit from. Since the first route was a mess and since I got caught there, it was an automatic no. With this option, there were very few challenges. No steep inclines. No ponds to weave around or creeks to leap over. And because it was so straight and flat, I had many options if I happened to get tailed or cut off, which really just meant that I could die running instead of cornered. For all of the anxiety that I had last night, I was surprisingly calm now. My mind was not racing with what-ifs. I was considering all of the time I would miss out on with my parents. I was worried about who would take care of them. I didn't think about my cell phone blowing up with missed calls and texts from Ryder after weeks of silence. I could do my best to face what was coming, but I could not control it. I trudged through the forest, hardly aware of the surroundings passing me by. The only thing I was searching for was wolves. Anyone other than the Royals were explicitly not my target. However, that didn't mean I wouldn't defend myself if I came across one. I kept one hand on a small silver knife I had tucked away in my waistband. My mind kept returning to that black beast. I was sure that I had struck him. I was sure that knife should have made contact. And if my eyes hadn't deceived me, what was I supposed to do if I came upon him now? How was I supposed to kill something like that? Thankfully, it didn't matter. I ventured farther onto the royal lands than I had previously. Back when I first scouted it out, I hadn't wanted to be noticed. Now I still feared being caught, but I needed a clear shot for the majority of the area. It was only a small cabin with a couple outbuildings, but the cleared area must have been over an acre. I was cautious, scouting out every step before I took it. making sure no other soul was in the area before I moved. Then, I spotted a tree, one that would conceal me and bear my weight. Wide branches that I could perch on as long as I needed to. I climbed up that tree, becoming acquainted with each dimple in the bark, each fresh branch. This old being and I were going to be the best of friends for a while. It all seemed so strange once I reached my perch. I could see it all. A cute wood log cabin. A nice little shed in the back. A garden with little sprouts in it. Were they blooming flowers or vegetables? I knew that these creatures caused wolf drain. I knew that my family was torn apart because of these beasts had on humans. I knew all of that in my head. And I also knew that I had to end them. I had to cut off the head. But looking at all of it, something settled in the pit of my heart. It was all so normal. Really. The little vacation cabin was a place anyone in the wealthy community would want to retreat to. I could picture a woman kneeling beside her flower bed, tending to ruthless weeds, cursing them but enjoying her time outside. I could see a husband tinkering on his car or starting up a barbecue, and a child running around, shrieking as they leapt over a sprinkler. It could just be so. Human. But it wasn't. And I knew that. So I stayed in that tree. I kept my bow ready for the first hour, pulled tight and poised to shoot. When nobody moved, my arms slowly relaxed. Eventually, I adjusted my position, letting myself sit on the branch and allowed my legs to dangle. They regained some of their feeling while I toyed with one of my arrows. Then slowly, ever so slow, it became harder and harder to tell time. When had I left Cassie? The sun was moving through the sky, descending, but there was no way that hours had passed without movement. These were the royals. Surely, they were doing something. Anything. I waited and waited. I shifted, maneuvered, scouted, pretended. I did anything to pass the time. I watched for great beasts that roamed low to the earth. I studied birds and trees that were watching me just as curiously. I checked the sun what felt like every 5 minutes, in disbelief that so much time had passed. But the rumbling in my stomach told me that it was true. The water I had lugged in with me was only doing so much to keep me sated, and the sun would be gone soon. I had maybe another hour before it disappeared behind the mighty mountains, but I could do nothing other than watch, even when my legs screamed, even when my eyes blurred. I knew, but the intensity was wearing off. I had whirled around so many times at the sound of a shrub rustling, only to find the mischievous wind playing with my... I felt like I had prepared myself for every possibility known to man with Milo, but I hadn't been ready for this. For the boredom, for the ache in my bladder. The sun was fully gone now. I knew it didn't matter. I would not be returning home until an arrow had been released from my bow. But I was about to piss myself up in a tree just because I thought Armin might turn his nose up at me. Maybe, if I was lucky, I would stumble on a berry bush and have something to fill the bottomless pit that had become my stomach. Like always, I surveyed the area before descending, but it was getting harder. My eyes could hardly make out shapes in this low lighting. It was now or never. I scuttled my way down and made sure to count 300 paces before I relieved myself in the quiet of the woods. Then it was a long trek back to the tree that I had chosen. Part of me resented the peace of nature already as I stared up at it. I hated that I would have to climb back up it. Would have to lose feeling in my legs again. My fingers dug into the bark. That was when I heard it. All right. All right. It was a man's voice. I released the tree, whirling around to see light spilling out of the cabin. And in the doorframe was a silhouette that could only belong to a man. Tall and broad. Ajax. Don't stay out too late. We are working on bedtime. A woman called out. Ajax. The king. The leader of the werewolves. Shit. I was in position. I didn't have my knives ready. But there he was. In the doorway. It wasn't what I planned. It wasn't what I had prepared for so extensively. But it was all second nature to me. I pulled that string back as easily as I breathed. I focused on my target with the eyes of a sniper. One breath in. Steadying my hands. Steadying my head. One breath out. I moved to release. Daddy. It was a child. A little girl's voice. My fingers fumbled. My arrow soared. But it had gone astray. There was nothing for a second. Then a roar that could have shattered the earth. Ajax. The woman screamed. Clementine. Clementine. Come to mommy. My ask was done. It had hardly begun. I grabbed the silver knives that had been prepped for easy access so I could throw them after releasing my arrow. I held them tight in my fist and I ran into the darkened woods, away from the royals that I could not kill. Chapter 19. Knowing that I was going to die did not make me give up like I expected. The queen's scream could have shaken the earth to its very core, whether it was her intention or not. Her cries would sick her entire army after me. And they did. I barely thought of the weapons I still had on my person, including the ones I held in my hands, until I heard paws pounding the soft ground behind me. It sounded like a stampede of mustangs tearing up the rocky desert, but they weren't wild prey animals tearing up Nevada terrain. They were predators with the intelligence of humans and the physicality of one of the top predators in the animal kingdom, and this was their territory. How many were there? I didn't dare look. It would cost me time. It would make my heart stutter. And either of those things could kill me now. I focused ahead, pumping my arms, adjusting my foot placement just like Milo taught me. I thought I was becoming a machine of power and precision. I had a task and I could complete it. I would complete it. I just had to try hard enough. All I needed to do was get to the road. Surely them would stop their chase then, like the one with red eyes had. Surely they would not cross out of their territory. If they did, the hull ran out behind me, piercing the air and my heart. Such a loud call, telling all of them exactly where I was. Any of them that hadn't located me already would now, but they were still behind me, and that was all that mattered. My breaths were coming out of my lungs harder. I knew that it meant that I would be losing steam soon. How long could wolves run for? I had never thought of that before, but if their natural stamina outweighed my trained body. No, I could not think that way. If I was going to think that way, I might as well just lay down and bare my throat to them. I told myself that I knew this path. I told myself that I had outrun the red-eyed beast. These wolves had nothing on me. This forest would not keep me trapped. I knew the shrubs and the trees. I dodged and ducked as needed. At one point, I tugged along a thick branch as I raced past, then released it when I was clear. The whimper that sounded out as the tree slapped one of them should have brought me joy. It only made my stomach tighten. They were close, too close. A flash of white on my right startled me. No, it wasn't possible. But there it was, a white werewolf, barreling towards me from the side. I barely had a chance to brace my body for impact before the stocky body slammed into me. The knives that I had brought along for moments like this were completely forgotten. It was a blur. My feet were knocked out from under me. My hands raised up to protect my face as I went down. My knees hit first, then my elbows. A heavy weight pressed down on my spine. I jerked hard, throwing the pounds off. I needed to see what I was fighting if I had any chance of winning. My pair of knives must have flown out of my hands when I went down, because now my hands were curled into tight fists around nothing. I managed to flip over onto my back and immediately wished I hadn't. It was all a swirl of fur, snarling mouth, and dark eyes. I could barely see the canopy above. My entire vision was filled with nothing but those that would end me. Teeth sank into my right ankle first. I screamed out, jerking as I tried to reach for one of my knives, just out of my reach on my right side. Paws on claws were on my chest then, forcing me back into earth. I swung without thinking, my palm slamming into the side of the werewolf's face while it stood in my chest like a gladiator posing with a fallen lion. It could at least wait until I was dead to gloat. I was rewarded with a snarl and foul breath in my face. My left wrist stung a second later, and I knew from the hot wetness surrounding it that I had been bitten yet again. This was it. I felt my body melt into the grass below for a moment. I had done the best I could. But like Milo always knew, I killed and hurt that child. And because of that, this would be my last memory in this world. I would get my throat torn out. My lungs would be punctured with claws as they ripped through my innards. The brain that stored all of my memories hugging my parents at graduation and a crying fit in kindergarten, it would rot in the woods. Every part of me would be gone. No one moved. Paws stayed planted on my chest. The teeth on my opposing limbs remained rooted, but they did not tear. They did not scratch. A light was coming in the distance. Many people described a light when dying, but I knew that this was not the case. The light moved and bumped as it neared, having no essence of godly glow to it, and I felt no release. A lantern, held by someone, or perhaps more than one person. Slowly, I could make out more distinct features, one smaller than the other, with a more feminine figure, 2 pairs of jeans, a plaid shirt for the larger male and simple t-shirt on the woman. The woman's dark hair bled into the night, one not ending without the other. And I knew right then who was coming to kill me. It only made sense that she'd be the one to deliver the final blow. "You didn't make it very far," Queen Keiko stated. Her voice was strikingly calm considering I had flung arrow at her partner no less than 5 minutes ago. "And you'll be absolutely heartbroken to know that Ajax is going to make a full recovery. A shot into the shoulder wouldn't bring down any werewolf, much less a king. If your little clan wanted him dead, they should have sent someone more capable to do it." I said nothing, only studying her. Surely, there had to be something sinister about her. She couldn't be guiding this group, hurting all of these people, and appear just like any other human woman would. But the lantern only illuminated almond-shaped eyes, a small nose, and knotted hair. I felt like I could pass her in a mall or while walking in a park. "Not very chatty," she mused, cocking her hip to one side. "That's fine. For now. The only reason these wolves aren't shredding you into little ribbons is because I'm hoping you're going to share some things with me. If you are cocky enough to shoot the king of werewolves on our own land, then hopefully you'll be brave enough to answer some simple questions. And if not," she shrugged her slender shoulders, "bring her to the shed. We're going to have some fun with this little hunter." Chapter 20. The queen asked me if I would walk myself. I said nothing to her, though I was sure if it was because I felt like I couldn't speak or some part of me was too stubborn to verbally answer her. She took my silence as answer enough and nodded to 2 women who appeared out of the darkness somewhere. It was all very methodical. A wolf stepped away, a creature in human form bound the limb before I could even consider moving it. The process was repeated until I was tied like a little calf at a rodeo. And like those little calves, all I wanted to do was scream and thrash. I was then tossed over a male's shoulder like a bag of trash. The queen led the group, never once glancing back at me. They all moved forward with frightening uniformity. Humans and wolves padded through the darkened forest side by side. None of them bothered to even cast a glance if I was bound. A couple people approached the queen for brief moments, and I was able to catch snippets of conversation as we walked. "Clementine is all right, but Chef's very upset." Keiko nodded once. "As soon as Ajax is properly bandaged up, she can stay with him. They'll come to her as soon as I'm done, to just please keep her inside for now. We don't know if more of them are lurking around." The person fell away, dipping back into the darkness of the woods. A sound wafted towards me, almost like seams tearing. I did my best not to think about it, but it was all around me. My head was bouncing with each step, my mind a little murky as I tried to wrap my mind around what just happened. But everywhere I looked, they were there. Gray wolves that were light on their paws, white wolves that were now coated in mud, brown ones with eyes so human it was hard to tear my gaze from them. One way or another, I was dead. They didn't even have to skin me alive, though I was certain that Keiko would love to do that at this point. All these wolves this close to me meant that there was no way my brain could survive. Wolf Drain was coming for me. "We found a cell phone," someone said, falling into step beside Keiko. My heart leapt into my throat. No, not my phone. It must have fallen out of my pockets during my desperate attempt to flee. It would take one text to Cassie to the whole team out here. One call to Milo could bring it all crumbling down. Without thinking, I squirmed towards the talking pair. The man holding me made a feral noise in the back of his throat that immediately halted all of my movements. Can we get it to turn on? Keiko wondered. No, it was in a puddle when we found it and is in pretty rough shape. I'm not sure if we can salvage anything from it at all. Do what you can, but I'm not too worried about it. The relief came as quickly as the panic had come, as much as I hated to admit it. Even while I was bobbing on Summon's shoulder, I could see the clear and concise way that the Queen commanded, and I could see just how much her followers respected her. There was not a glimmer of doubt. If anything, they all shone with adoration. Were they all so happy to follow her every command, even when it meant giving vulnerable humans like my parents a lifelong disability? Were they even aware that they had such an effect on humans? Would they even believe me if I told them? The main buildings came into view, and I was stricken with just how little distance I had covered. It felt like I had been running for miles before I had gone down. But it was all right here. And from the outside lights on the main cabin, I could see the glint of eyes in the opposing forest. So many, too many of them. I had been a fool for ever thinking that I was going to make it out of here alive. The group walked past the cabin and towards a smaller outbuilding that was some distance away. When the door was opened on the small structure, I saw that Keiko hadn't been lying when she called it a shed. I guess that even werewolves needed to prune trees and mow the grass every so often. Tie her to the lawn chair. Then I want no assent in here. Everyone else is going to be searching for anyone else that might be hiding. But her and I are going to have a little chat, Keiko ordered. And, as always, what she demanded was completed. I was dumped on an ancient plastic chair as if I were nothing more than a sack of old potatoes. With methodic efficiency, all 4 of my limbs were strapped down to the arms and legs of the chair. And, for the first time in my life, I prayed that I had wolf drain. And I prayed that it would act quickly, because with the way Keiko was looking at me, I knew she was going to get her answers out of me, even if she had to tear them from my very soul. For a while, there was nothing but the 2 of us and the sound of the old light bulb overhead buzzing. She just sat on an old paint can, watching every twitch and breath. I had to fight my instincts, forcing myself to keep my eyes on her, as much as I wanted to search for weakness in the knots. A sharp blade, or any kind of distraction. I knew in my heart that they were pointless, even if the knots failed, even if I could find a weapon and kill the Queen. I was not going to make it off their territory alive, and I was not going to get the chance to slaughter that little girl either. The mission was over. I had failed. The Queen stared at me with her perfectly human eyes, and I stared right back. When my people started dying suddenly, I didn't think some little girl with strawberry blonde hair was going to be the cause. Keiko said finally, running her eyes over every inch of me. I have to tell you, you aren't meeting my expectations. When I was sent to take down a king and queen, I thought I would find someone with enough power and influence to not have to do the dirty work herself. I spat back. At that, she smiled and leaned back against the wall. If you think that any one of those wolves would deny the opportunity to rip out your throat, you are very wrong. However, you went after my mate. You could have hurt my little girl. I take that very, very personally. So, and be the one that finds out all your little secrets. You're going to tell me who you're working for and exactly where to find them. You're going to sing for me like a fucking bird. I snorted. What makes you think I'm not doing this alone? Maybe I just hate having scum so close to my home. Maybe I'm mad that my people are dying too. She ran her eyes over me again. Please. I know that you aren't capable of doing this all by yourself. So tell me, who is pulling the strings? As if I would tell you anything. It was a knee-jerk reaction. She was goading me and I had slipped up. I was hoping you would say that. She purred. Now we get to see just how attached you are to those fingernails as we rip them out one by one. And don't worry. I definitely have someone to do that for me. Chapter 21. The pain of having a fingernail ripped out of my finger was not something I expected. I thought it was something I could grit my teeth through. In my head, I would look past the man wrenching the fingernail from my nail bed and meet the queen's eyes with steady indifference. That is not what happened. The pain was sharp and fast. It tore up my arm, feeling like I had just plunged my wrist into boiling water. A scream was ripped from my lungs before I could even consider holding it back. It was hot and cold all at once. It made my chest constrict and my mind turn to ash. When the pain subsided enough that I could bring awareness to anything other than my arm, I realized that tears were pouring down my cheeks and breaths were coming in and out of my lungs so raggedly. It was a miracle I hadn't fainted. "Tell me who you're working for," Queen Keiko demanded. Did her voice sound a little off, or was that just the ringing in my ears? I couldn't tell. And frankly, I didn't care. Because as the sharp pain was gone, but a throbbing had replaced it. I felt each pulse of my body through that finger, each time my heart pumped, and it stretched through my hand, making me grit my teeth. "You have a lot of fingers left to go, and I have all night," she pressed. I think, if I had eaten anything within the past 12 hours, I would have vomited on the shoes of the man pulling my nails. I don't work for anyone. I lied. Maybe she would believe it this time. Hell. With the way my mind was consumed with the pain, I was almost starting to believe it. But I could just tell the truth. I could just confess. This could all be over. I just had to say those little words. Or any words that would make her believe me. "Liar," Keiko snarled. "Do you think I'm stupid enough to think that all of this could be a coincidence? Do you expect me to believe that you know nothing of all those wolves that we buried? Wolves that had arrows just like yours sticking out from them. Knives like the ones you lost embedded in their skin. You're going to tell me the truth, or Noah is going to pull another." Keiko, the man. Noah groaned. He sounded a little sickly. Or maybe that was just me projecting onto him. "Last chance," she warned. I could not betray my team. Armand and Dawn had found me at the hospital. They dusted me off. They took care of my parents. They gave me purpose when I felt as if life was no longer worth living. Milo had fought to keep me alive when the others had sent me to die. And sweet Cassie had barely been able to let me get out of the car earlier. I would not repay them by sending werewolves to their front doors. I said nothing, tipping my head back and bracing for the pain. Do it. Like all of her other subjects, Noah always obeyed his queen. The first nail had come out quick, almost like he was well versed with this kind of thing. The second one showed me that he certainly was not familiar with the art of torture. It was slow and fumbling. I could feel every tug and every tear. I wailed and screamed for every second of it, relieved when the nail finally pulled free. I pitched my body forward as far as the restraints would let me, fearing that I was going to throw up anyway. "Are you ready to start talking?" Keiko asked. I didn't even know if I was capable of words at this point. My mind felt so muddled that I barely even considered that this could be the beginning of Wolf Drain. It only made sense, really. How long had I been around the werewolves now? At least a couple hours between being pinned in the forest, carried over a shoulder, and here with the queen herself and her henchmen. Was it possible that royalty drained humans faster? Still not feeling particularly chatty, the queen taunted, cocking her head to one side. "I'm not going to tell you anything," I vowed, but it was getting harder and harder to trust myself. Something shifted then. Her almond-shaped eyes changed, as if she were taking me in for the first time. Slowly, her posture straightened. "You tried to kill my mate and you could have killed my daughter. If you give me the information I need, I promise that your death will be quick. It is the only mercy I can offer you. I will never tell you what you want to hear." "Very well. I won't lie to you and tell you that I'm particularly well versed in this whole torture thing. But I can tell you that the internet has lots of options for me. I could force feed you until you feel like you're going to explode. Or I can give you no food at all. Starvation seems like an awful way to go. Or dehydration. Apparently, it feels like your organs are cracking inside you." It was all gruesome. It was all vile. My mouth already felt dry. My stomach already so empty. And it all made me wish that I had just taunted those werewolves in the forest into tearing me apart. Keiko was a commander, not a diplomat. She was here to create relations. Could I just give up now? If I lie, would she offer me a smooth death before she found out that or was I just risking more torture and suffering once she found out that I had tricked her? My mouth opened, and I would have released whatever came to mind first, whether it be a taunt, a truth, or a lie. But the shed door creaked open. A silhouette filled the space, masculine and large. I saw auburn hair first. King Ajax, up and walking. He was very much the opposite of what I wished him to be, with his arm in a sling. He sauntered into the oversized garden shed as if it were a palace. The queen immediately straightened from where she sat, an entirely human expression of concern on her face now. Ajax, you're supposed to be resting. I was told, but I have a noise complaint to make. It's a little difficult to go to sleep right after I've been shot, and listening to someone scream makes it even harder. Sweetheart, I was entranced, watching their dynamic. It was so strange. All of it. I saw the panic in her features. I saw the mirrored worry in his face when she rose to touch his good shoulder. And right there, I saw the fear. I saw the tragedy that flashed in her gaze and knew that she must have been thinking his life. How close I had come to taking him away from her forever. As if she could read my mind, she whirled around to face me. "I'm dealing with it," she stated. Ajax took a moment then to study me. I couldn't even tell the color of his eyes from this distance, but the way he looked at me made my chest want to curl into itself. "Dealing with it," Ajax repeated, now blatantly staring at the bloody dents of my fingers where my 2 nails used to be. "I can handle myself," Keiko pressed. "You need to go lay down. You'll go rest once this is over and I can have you safe and by my side again. I don't want to leave you alone with this mongrel. Noah can continue on for a while, but I've already reached out to the team. Someone will be here in the next couple of days and we can count sheep while they try to crack her instead. They'll be much better at it than either of us anyway." "Right," Keiko said, smooth her hands down her plaid shirt as if it were a fine gown. "Noah, we're going to change tactics.